And do you think when the IMF published the recent agreements between it and Egypt, they stated some agreements, one of it was reducing the state footprint, including military-owned companies. And some economists published some analysis saying that this is a golden opportunity for the Egyptian economy to withdraw the military grip over the economy. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes. The military and government has too much of a grip on the Egyptian economy. But the problem is that the IMF has no way to enforce these conditions. That's why all the IMF programs fail, because the IMF is not in control of things in Egypt. The government's in control. And the government, in my judgment, probably won't do very much. And among other things, they're going to do some stupidities like this huge mega project of a new capital. That will be a white elephant of the highest order. The waste, fraud, and abuse associated with that will be enormous. The corruption will be tremendous. I think it's a completely unwise thing to do, a big distraction. In other words, it's a big distraction for the real problems. What the government is doing, they're saying, we're going to build a new city, but you Egyptians eat chicken feet in the meantime. And by the way, if you look at, for example, the Cato Institute, which you mentioned I'm associated with, they evaluate 165 countries every year on human freedom and economic freedom. And where does Egypt stand? On human freedom, they're 161 out of 165 countries. Economic freedom, 149 out of 165 countries. Rule of law, 144 out of 165. Safety and security, 137 out of 165. The government can't even keep Egypt safe for people to be walking around in the street. Also, the legal system and property rights, 143 out of 165. Terrible rankings and all those structural things. Those are all structural, institutional things that don't get changed very fast. And the rating of Egypt, they're at the bottom of the barrel.
But you know, Steve, the governments always do like to argue such a ranking and such an indicator. So the question is, from the government perspective, how these all bad rankings and indicators impact the economy?
Well, I've done a number of studies on this, and if the economic freedom scores, the better your score, the higher the potential and the actual growth rate in the economy. So it's very closely related, almost one-to-one. You increase your economic freedom ranking by 10%, and you get a 10% jump in the potential and actual GDP in the country. And so if you want to be prosperous, you have to have a lot of economic freedom.
Yeah.
And let's look at the one that ranks up at the top, Singapore. Singapore has a very high, either one or two, I can't remember the rank right now, but they became independent in 1965. Lee Kuan Yew became the president. He introduced all kinds of free market, sound money, security, safety, rule of law, private property, all those things got much better. And Singapore, from 1965 until today, they were one of the poorest countries in the world when they became independent in 1965. Now they're one of the richest.
And you just said that IMF can't force the Egyptian regime to withdraw the military grip from the economy. However, they can hold the installments of this recent loan. They just released 300 million and 47 as a first installment. So does the IMF can hold these other installments until the regime follow the agreement?
They could, but they typically don't. And as I say, the whole withholding of installments doesn't really have much teeth. If you look at the history of the IMF, most of the countries that are involved with the IMF are involved on a regular basis. Like Egypt. As I said, they started in 1962 with IMF programs. Every decade since the 1960s, Egypt has had an IMF program, and all of them have failed. If they would have worked, there would be no need for the IMF. The pound would be strong. There'd be no inflation. Poverty levels would be a lot lower. The government wouldn't be suggesting ridiculous things like eating chicken feet to control inflation. Now, all of that would have been fixed a long time ago if the IMF program worked. The problem is they don't work.